Hello there, and welcome to the Sleepless Scientist, a quiet place in the cosmos where your thoughts can unwind and knowledge becomes a soft lullaby for the night. Tonight's journey will take us into the self-aware universe and a question that sits right at the edge of science and wonder. Does reality, in some deep and subtle way, know itself? But before you settle in and get cozy, I'd love if you could take a moment to like this video and subscribe. Only if you truly find these quiet explorations enjoyable. And when you're ready, leave a comment to let me know where in the world you're listening from and what time it is for you right now. It's always such a joy to see all the places we gather from, each in our own little slice of time. Now feel free to dim the lights, maybe turn on a fan for a soft background hum, and let's gently begin our journey into this question together. And if your mind begins to wander, that's perfectly fine. Let it drift. We'll still be here, quietly unfolding the story. Imagine yourself standing somewhere quiet and familiar, perhaps on a balcony, or by a window, or on a small rooftop where the city noise has faded into a gentle murmur. Above you, the sky's not just dark, it is deep, like an old ocean turned upside down, sprinkled with the pale lights of distant suns. You look up, and for a long moment you simply breathe and watch. Most of the time we treat that sky as a backdrop, a kind of cosmic wallpaper. The stars are there the way a ceiling is there. Overhead, decorative, silent. The universe is something we live inside, but not something we usually think of as alive. And yet, if you stay there just a little longer, another thought begins to appear, as quietly as a new star blinking into view. What if the universe is not only something you are looking at? What if, in some way that is hard to put into words, the universe is also looking back? This is the question that will guide our whole journey tonight. It sounds strange at first, almost like a line from a poem, but it has been whispered in different forms for a very long time. Philosophers, mystics, and more recently physicists and neuroscientists have all, in their own languages, circled around this idea. If consciousness lives inside the universe, and consciousness is able to think about the universe, then in some quiet, indirect way, the universe has become aware of itself. You are, after all, made of it. The atoms in your bones, the iron in your blood, the calcium in your teeth, the carbon that shapes your cells. All of these were once part of stars, drifting clouds of gas, and long vanished explosions that rippled through space. The brain that is listening to these words is built from ingredients forged in distant furnaces of light. When you think about the universe is not being observed from outside. It is a part of itself, looking inward. This thought has appeared in many cultures. Some ancient traditions imagine the world as a living being, the sky as a great mind, the earth as a mother, rivers as veins, mountains as bones. To them it was natural to think that awareness did not just start in human skulls, but was woven through everything from the ground beneath their feet to the stars overhead. Modern science, for a long time, walked away from that picture. To understand nature, it treated the universe as a machine, elegant, predictable, made of parts that could be taken apart and studied separately. That approach has given us extraordinary power and understanding. It has built telescopes that can see almost to the beginning of time, and microscopes that can peer into the quiet traffic of molecules inside a single cell. But along the way, the world we talked about began to sound very still and very silent. A kind of giant, magnificent but unconscious mechanism. Then something unexpected happened. The more closely we studied the mind, the harder it became to pretend that consciousness was a simple side effect, an easy extra added to a complicated brain. There is an innerness to experience, the feeling of warmth, the taste of tea, the ache of missing someone, the quiet sense of I am here watching this happen, that does not reduce cleanly to moving parts. We can map the brain in astonishing detail, link regions to functions, measure electrical storms of thought. And yet the simple fact that there is something it feels like to be you remains, stubborn and luminous. This is sometimes called the hard problem of consciousness. Not hard because it is unsolvable today, but hard because it asks why anything should feel like anything at all. If the universe is only ever moving matter and shifting energy, why is there an inner movie? Why is there a story being told, and not just motions being played out? Some thinkers, faced with this puzzle, began to turn the question inside out. Instead of asking, how does dead matter produce living mind? They asked, what if mind, in some very faint and humble way, is present all along? Not in the sense that every stone has thoughts about its day, or that every atom has a to-do list, but in the sense that the ingredients of consciousness are not added late and suddenly. They are there from the beginning, like a quiet potential that grows more intricate as the universe grows more complex. Other thinkers extended the thought even further. If parts of the universe can become conscious, if stars can give birth to worlds, and worlds can give birth to beings who can ask why they exist, then perhaps the entire unfolding process, taken as a whole, has a kind of awareness. Not an awareness with eyes and ears and hands, but an awareness built from patterns, from relationships, from the way everything holds together and responds to everything else. This is where your place beneath that night sky becomes something more than a pretty picture. You're not simply a spectator, you are a small region of the universe in which the universe has learned to notice itself. When you trace the paths of galaxies in your imagination, or think about the age of the stars, or wonder whether there is life elsewhere, the questions do not arrive from outside reality. They rise within it, like ripples in a still pond, created by the pond's own surface. You might feel, at times, very small in the face of all this. The distances between galaxies, the age of the cosmos, the number of stars, is all quietly overwhelming. And yet there is a strange balance here. The same universe that stretches so far beyond you is also intimate enough to lend you every particle of your body, every spark of your thought. When you look up, there is a sense in which you're not looking at something other than yourself. You're a local expression of the same story that lights the sky. So tonight, instead of treating the universe as a distant stage, we'll gently ask, what changes if we think of it as a vast, unfolding awareness? What if reality is not only what you move through, but also, in some hard-to-name way, the very field in which your own awareness is held? As we move further, we will not rush to answers. We will walk slowly, letting the questions sit with us like a companion, as constant and quiet as the stars. Long before telescopes swept across the sky, long before the first equations tried to describe gravity or light, human beings stood beneath the same stars you see today and felt something quietly familiar in their glow. For many ancient cultures, the universe was not a cold expanse of objects drifting through emptiness. It was alive, not in the way an animal is alive with breath and heartbeat, but in a deeper, more pervasive sense. The world itself seemed to be filled with presence, with intention, with a kind of awareness that echoed softly through everything. This idea did not belong to one place or one people. It appeared independently in different corners of the earth, as if humans, separated by oceans and centuries, looked at the same sky and arrived at the same intuition. In India, early philosophers wrote that consciousness was not something that emerged from matter. Instead, it was woven into the fabric of existence itself. In Greece, thinkers like Thales suggested that even the simplest things possessed a hint of spirit. Across East Asia, Buddhist and Taoist traditions spoke of mind and nature as inseparable, two aspects of the same flow of reality. To many indigenous traditions, mountains, rivers, winds, and stars were not just parts of nature. They were participants in a shared field of being. What all these traditions shared was a refusal to draw a sharp line between the living and the non-living, between mind and world. They sensed a continuity in things, a gentle hum running through every part of existence. It did not matter if something was a stone, a tree, or a person, all were expressions of the same underlying presence. Awareness was not a rare spark confined to the fragile shells of living creatures. It was a fundamental property of the universe itself, like light or movement. Much later, philosophers gave this intuition a name: panpsychism. The word may sound complex, but the idea is simple when unfolded softly. Instead of thinking of awareness as an on or off switch, panpsychism imagines it as a spectrum. Everything in the universe contains at least a trace of experience, a quiet inner side like a tiny ember glowing in the dark. The difference between a stone and a human is not that one has awareness and the other does not. It is that one glows faintly while the other burns brightly. To make this clearer, imagine a landscape at night. In the distance, you see small houses with a few lights flickering inside. They're quiet, almost asleep. Farther away, a city blazes, filled with windows illuminated in every colour, with streets humming and glowing like a living organism. According to panpsychism, the universe is a bit like that landscape. Everything contributes some amount of inner light, but only in some places, like in the minds of animals and humans, does the light become bright enough to reflect, question, and understand itself. Of course, ancient people did not speak in the language of landscapes and cities. Their metaphors were simpler, closer to their daily lives. They saw patterns in the growth of trees, in the turning of seasons, in the dance of fire and the depths of water. The movements of the sky felt too rhythmic to be accidental, too graceful to be mechanical. When lightning cracked open the clouds, when dreams carried strange messages, when animals seemed to act with intention, it felt natural to believe that something more was at work, something alive beneath the surface. These early ideas were not scientific theories in the modern sense. They did not come with measurements or diagrams. They were reflections born from observation and intuition, shaped by the desire to understand how it feels to live inside a world that seems vibrant and responsive. Yet, even though they lacked the language of physics, these ideas held a quiet wisdom. They recognized that mind and matter are deeply entangled. They refused to treat consciousness as a trivial accident. For thousands of years, this worldview remained the background of human thought. But as science grew, the picture shifted. When the scientific revolution blossomed in Europe, thinkers began to describe the universe as a grand machine. The stars became objects following predictable paths. The Earth became a sphere governed by forces. Life became a chemical process. The world, once alive with spirit, was now a collection of parts. Beautiful, intricate, but entirely mechanical. This shift brought progress, but it also brought silence. The more we explained, the quieter the universe seemed. Panpsychism faded into the shadows, dismissed as superstition or poetic imagination. The idea of a living cosmos no longer fit the new picture of gears and laws and measurable quantities. Mind, in this view, emerged only when matter reached a certain complexity. Awareness was something that happened late in the story, not something present from the beginning. Yet the question never fully disappeared. And as modern science probed deeper into the nature of consciousness, cracks began to appear in the purely mechanical worldview. The mind proved more mysterious than expected. The inner experience of being, of feeling, sensing, and knowing resisted simple explanation. Matter alone, arranged in any pattern, didn't obviously give rise to experience, and so philosophers revisited old ideas with new curiosity. In this renewed exploration, panpsychism found a different kind of home. Its ancient form, even when expressed through myth or ritual, spoke to something modern science could not fully ignore: the possibility that awareness is not an afterthought of the universe, but one of its original qualities. Instead of emerging suddenly when brains evolved, consciousness might be a property the universe has been carrying quietly since the very beginning. When framed this way, Panpsychism does not claim that rocks think, or that rivers dream. It simply suggests that the universe may not be divided neatly between things that feel and things that do not. Instead, everything might share a faint interiority, a tiny spark of the same essence that burns brightly in humans. Soft analogies help here. Think of temperature. Every object has some degree of warmth, even if most feel cold to the touch. Or think of light. Some places are bright, others dim, but darkness is never absolute. Panpsychism treats consciousness like that, something present everywhere, but only vivid in certain forms. This ancient intuition, revived in gentle modern frames, opens a doorway into our larger question. If the smallest things possess a whisper of experience, and if larger structures build upon those whispers, could the universe itself be the most expansive expression of awareness? Could reality, unfolding across billions of years, be slowly shaping a way to sense, understand, or reflect upon itself? We are not trying to answer these questions quickly. For now, it is enough to stand with the ancients for a moment, listening to their quiet belief that the universe is not merely seen, it is, in some subtle sense, seeing. As we move forward, we will bring this intuition with us, allowing it to soften the path between old philosophy and new science. There is a quiet moment in the history of science where the conversation about the universe takes an unexpected turn. Up until that point, many physicists were comfortable imagining reality as a great unfolding machine, precise, elegant, and indifferent. But then came a voice like John Wheeler's, calm yet startling, asking a question that seemed too philosophical for physics and yet too precise to ignore. What if the universe does not simply exist on its own? What if it requires participation? Wheeler was not trying to mystify science. He was in fact a deeply practical physicist, someone who spent his life studying the behaviour of particles, the collapse of stars, and the bending of space-time. But he also had a gift for looking at ordinary scientific ideas from a slightly different angle, like someone turning a familiar object in their hands and suddenly noticing a reflection that had always been there but never truly seen. To understand his idea, imagine a simple loop. Not a loop of string or wire, but a loop of meaning. At one end of this loop is the universe, vast, ancient, and full of potential. At the other end is the observer, a being capable of noticing, measuring, asking questions. The surprising part is that, in Wheeler's view, these two ends do not stand apart. They meet. The universe gives rise to observers, and observers help give definition to the universe. In his words, it is a self-excited circuit, a system that, in a quiet and subtle way, brings itself into clarity through the very beings it produces. To appreciate what Wheeler meant, imagine a landscape covered in mist. You know the hills and trees are there, but you cannot quite see their shapes. Then, as the sun rises and light touches the valley, outlines begin to appear. The light does not create the trees or the hills, it simply reveals them. Wheeler suggested something gently similar. The measurements and observations made by conscious beings help sharpen the universe's details, bringing its structure into focus. Without observation, the world might still exist, but its features would remain blurred, like shapes hidden behind fog. Of course, Wheeler was building on quantum mechanics, a field full of strange behaviours where the act of observing seems to influence the outcome of events. But Wheeler took a softer route than the more sensational interpretations. He did not say consciousness magically collapses waves, or that the universe needs human minds to function. Instead, he proposed that the interaction between observer and reality is woven into the fabric of physics, that the very process of measurement helps establish the world's definite features. To express this without equations, think of a book that has not yet been read. The story inside is complete, but until someone opens the pages and reads the words, the characters remain suspended, waiting in a quiet, unrealized state. Wheeler wondered whether the cosmos might be similar, not incomplete, but waiting for participation to bring certain aspects into full expression. He condensed this idea into a simple phrase: it from bit. At first, those words sound cryptic, like a puzzle whispered by a teacher at dusk. But when unpacked gently, the meaning becomes soft and intuitive. It refers to the physical world, the things we touch, see, and measure. Bit refers to a unit of information, the simplest possible choice between alternatives. In Wheeler's view, every physical event, every object, every structure in the universe may ultimately trace back to acts of information, moments where possibilities become specific outcomes. This idea does not require any formulas. It can be pictured easily. Each interaction in the universe, the collision of particles, the bending of light, the formation of stars, carries information about what is happening. As the universe evolves, it collects, organizes, and responds to information, much like a living system that learns. And because conscious beings are part of this process, their observations, questions, and measurements become threads in the tapestry of the universe's unfolding. Wheeler sometimes illustrated this with a drawing of a large eye gazing at the universe, yet also being formed by it. The image is simple, but powerful. The observer is made from the universe, and the universe is made meaningful through the observer. It is a circle, not a line, a relationship, not a hierarchy. To bring this down to something more familiar, imagine standing beside a still pond. You lean over, and your reflection appears. The reflection is not separate from you. It is shaped by your presence, yet it also reveals something back to you. Your posture, your expression, the softness of the surrounding light. Wheeler's participatory universe is a little like that reflection. The universe is the pond. Consciousness is the face leaning over it. What exists is influenced by what is reflected, and what is reflected is influenced by what exists. This does not mean the universe depends on humans, or that stars would vanish without eyes looking at them. Wheeler's idea is gentler and broader. It suggests that information and observation are inseparable from the way reality expresses itself. The universe is not a silent machine that grinds on without regard. It is an unfolding dialogue, where the questions asked by observers influence how the story continues. Modern physics does not fully embrace Wheeler's view, but it has not dismissed it either. Instead, it treats it like a poetic doorway, one that leads from the strict world of equations into a quieter realm where meaning and awareness have a place alongside matter and energy. Some physicists see Wheeler's idea as a metaphor, others see it as a clue, but almost all agree that it asks something essential. How can a universe that eventually produces beings capable of reflection be completely separate from that reflection? Think again of the loop. You're on one side of it, listening, breathing softly, letting thoughts drift. The universe is on the other side, vast and ancient, and somewhere in the middle, between your awareness and the cosmos itself, lies a connection so deep that words can only trace its outline. Wheeler invited us to look at that connection, not as an answer, but as an invitation to wonder. Perhaps reality is not just something we witness. Perhaps it is something we help define. When we speak about a universe that might, in some distant and difficult to describe way, know itself, the question that rises almost immediately is simple and profound. What do we really mean by awareness? Before we can explore galaxies, quantum interactions, or the delicate web of information that seems to tie everything together, we need to settle gently into the nature of the thing at the center of our curiosity. Because unless we understand what awareness is, or at least feel its contours, we cannot meaningfully ask whether the universe might possess something like it. Awareness begins in the most intimate place possible, your own experience. Not the complicated thoughts that spin through your mind on busy days, Not the plans or memories or worries you carry around, but the simple, immediate fact that you are here. There is a quiet presence beneath everything you think and feel, a space where sensations, sounds, and thoughts appear. Right now, as you listen, there is a small field of experience unfolding: your breath, the rhythm of the words, the faint atmosphere of your surroundings. This field is not a thing you can hold or measure. It is more like a soft glow in which the world reveals itself. If someone asked you to design a machine to produce this glow, you would find it difficult to even describe the task. We can point to neurons firing and chemicals flowing, but none of those in themselves explain the innerness of consciousness. They explain the activity of a brain, but not the sense of being that lights up behind your eyes. This gap is what some philosophers call the hard problem. The phrase is simple, but the meaning is subtle. It is hard not in the sense of difficulty, but in the sense of asking something that may lie beyond the usual tools of physics. Why does experience arise at all? Why is there something it feels like to be you, instead of simply a collection of processes carrying on quietly? To move gently into this question, imagine a city at dawn. Streetlights flicker off as the sky brightens. People begin to wake in quiet apartments. Coffee makers hum to life. Windows glow. The city becomes aware of itself in a new day. Each of those lights and movements is a simple physical event. Yet when we step back and look at the whole city, we sense a kind of atmosphere, a collective awakening that feels almost like a presence. Something similar happens with the brain. Individual neurons behave in simple, predictable ways. But when billions of them fire together in intricate patterns, something emerges that feels like a unified, conscious experience. This brings us to a gentle distinction, one that is helpful as we move toward larger scales. Awareness is not the same as self-awareness. Awareness is the base layer, the quiet fact of experiencing anything at all. A cat curled up by a window is aware. It feels comfort, warmth, the shift of light across its fur. Self-awareness, however, involves recognizing oneself as the experiencer, the subject inside the experience. Humans develop this slowly, through childhood, as they realize they are the ones at the center of their own perspective. Understanding this distinction allows us to navigate the conversation about the universe more carefully. We're not asking whether galaxies think or whether stars have opinions. Those are human forms of self-awareness, far too specific for a cosmic context. Instead, we're asking something simpler and more foundational. Could the universe possess some kind of basic awareness? The way a forest possesses a quiet but undeniable coherence, or the way a tide pool reflects the rhythms of the ocean that feeds it? To explore this softly, imagine a calm forest. Each tree responds to sunlight, water, and the chemical signals sent by its neighbours. The forest does not have a central brain, yet it behaves in a coordinated way, sharing resources, adapting to seasons, recovering from storms. Biologists now understand that forests communicate through networks of roots and fungi, exchanging nutrients and warnings in ways that resemble a primitive nervous system. The forest is not thinking in any familiar sense, but it is not unaware either. It is responsive, connected, structured, and awake to the conditions of its own existence. Awareness, at its simplest, may be the capacity to respond to information in a way that reflects unity. A thermostat reacts to temperature, but it does not experience warmth. A plant turns toward the sun, sensing light in a basic way. An animal feels hunger and comfort. A human contemplates love, loss, and the stars. The higher the level of integration, the richer the awareness becomes. This is why some scientists speak not of consciousness as a switch, but as a spectrum, like brightness, varying from faint to brilliant. If we imagine awareness as a spectrum instead of a binary, it becomes easier to wonder whether the universe, taken as a whole, might possess some subtle form of it. not necessarily awareness in the emotional human sense, but an underlying capacity to integrate, to respond, to hold its own structure in a unified way. When we say the universe knows itself, we do not mean it speaks or dreams. We mean something softer, that reality might have an inner dimension that parallels its outer form. Some thinkers express this through gentle metaphors. They say the universe breathes in its expansion, remembers in the structure of its galaxies, listens in the quiet laws that guide the dance of particles. These metaphors are not claims, but invitations to imagine that awareness may not require eyes or ears, only connection and coherence. To illustrate this, picture a single drop of water falling into a still pond. The drop becomes part of the pond instantly, but a moment later a circle of ripples moves outward, touching every part of the surface. The pond feels the drop in the sense that it responds evenly and completely, integrating the event into its whole body. Awareness at the cosmic scale might be something like that, a vast field responding to every change, every flicker of light, every fold of space. And just as the pond does not need a mind to respond, the universe might not need a brain to hold awareness. It may simply need the ability to integrate itself, to weave every event into its unfolding story. If awareness is the inwardness of integration, then perhaps the universe, being the most integrated system of all, holds a kind of awareness too, one so large, so quiet, and so ancient that it is difficult for us to name. As we carry this thought forward, we do so gently, knowing that we are touching the edges of mystery, but by clarifying what awareness means, by seeing it as a spectrum, as a capacity for experiencing, as an inner dimension of connection, we create a foundation that allows us to ask deeper questions. In the sessions ahead, as we explore information, emergence, and the cosmic web, this understanding will help us navigate the possibility that reality is not only observed but somehow observing too. If you sit very still for a moment and let your attention drift down into the smallest places you can imagine, you will find yourself in a realm that seems almost dreamlike. It is the world beneath molecules, beneath atoms, beneath even the tiny particles that make up the cores of atoms. It is a place where certainty dissolves into possibilities, where things do not take on sharp outlines until something nudges them into clarity. This is the quantum world, delicate, playful, unpredictable, and it is here that some of the quietest ideas about awareness begin to whisper. Before going further, it is important to be gentle with this part of the journey. When people hear quantum, they often imagine magic or mind power or mysterious forces responding to thoughts. But the truth, though soft and subtle, is far simpler. In quantum physics, an observation does not mean a human mind concentrating on something. It means an interaction, a tiny exchange of energy or information between one thing and another. When a particle bumps into another particle, or when a detector catches a faint hint of light, that event counts as an observation. No human intention is needed, no awareness in the usual sense, just contact. And yet, despite its simplicity, something about this process feels unusual. In the quantum world, a particle does not always have a fixed position or a single definite state. It holds multiple possibilities, like a quiet chord of notes waiting to be played. When a measurement happens, when an interaction occurs, those possibilities narrow into a single reality. The particle chooses, or is forced to choose, a path. Not because someone is watching it consciously, but because the universe is full of moments where things meet, touch, and exchange tiny hints of information. This behaviour has inspired many thinkers to wonder whether the seeds of awareness might be hiding here, in this strange responsiveness to interaction. Not awareness in the human sense, not thoughts or feelings or memories, but something softer, more primitive. A kind of proto-awareness, a faint capacity to respond, to register change, to know, in the smallest possible sense, that something has happened. To picture this gently, imagine each quantum particle as a tiny messenger moving through a quiet hall. It does not speak or understand, it simply reacts. When it encounters another messenger, or the boundary of a space, or even a gentle push from a passing wave of energy, it responds instantly. That response is not thought, far from it. It is more like a reflex, a natural echo to whatever touches it. But in that echo lies the hint of what some philosophers call proto-consciousness, the idea that at the smallest scales the universe might carry the earliest traces of what later becomes awareness. This idea is not mainstream science, but it is not dismissed outright either. Instead, it sits in a quiet corner of philosophical curiosity, where people ask questions not to solve the universe but to understand its texture. If awareness emerges from matter, they wonder, then maybe it makes sense that matter holds, deep within it, the barest shadow of awareness. It would be strange, after all, for consciousness to arise suddenly in a universe that had never shown the slightest trace of it before. Nature tends to move in gradients, not leaps. To make this more intuitive, imagine a gradient of colour stretching from deep blue to bright gold. Consciousness, as we know it in our own minds, would be the gold at the end. But perhaps, somewhere near the blue end of the spectrum there are faint early hues, the quiet beginnings of responsiveness. A quantum particle would sit at the very start of this spectrum, glowing almost imperceptibly. A plant responding to sunlight and soil would glow a little brighter, an animal feeling fear or comfort brighter still, and a human, reflecting, grieving, laughing, imagining, would shine near the golden edge. In this light, the question becomes not, do quantum particles think? But is the universe built from ingredients that allow the possibility of thinking to appear later? This softer question opens the door to a gentler understanding. It lets us imagine that the universe did not begin empty and silent, only to produce mind billions of years later. Instead, it may have begun with tiny hints of the capacities that would, over immense stretches of time, bloom into the experiences we now call consciousness. Of course, we must be careful not to read too much into this metaphor. Quantum particles do not choose in any meaningful sense. They do not dream or remember. They do not have desires. Their responsiveness is mechanical, not emotional. But even so, the way they respond gives us a language for thinking about awareness as something that might grow from simple foundations rather than as appear all at once like a sudden spark. Another way to feel into this idea is to imagine the difference between a stone and a living cell. A stone sits where it is placed, but a cell responds. It senses changes in temperature, chemicals, and light. It adjusts, moves, divides, adapts. Somewhere between the total stillness of minerals and the lively interplay of living cells, there is a transition, a slow shift from pure physical reaction to something resembling the earliest forms of life. Likewise, there may be a much earlier transition, deep in the quantum world, from total inertness to the faintest capacity for response. It is in this primordial responsiveness that some philosophers see the quiet dawn of proto-awareness. This is not meant to define consciousness. It is not meant to explain the hard problem or to solve mysteries that have puzzled scientists and thinkers for centuries. Instead, it is an invitation to imagine that awareness may not be a rare jewel found only in complicated brains, but rather a delicate thread woven through reality from the very beginning. A thread that grows, strengthens, and binds more deeply as matter becomes more complex, until eventually, through an extraordinary unfolding, it becomes the vivid interior life we carry within us. So when we ask whether the quantum world feels the smallest stirring, we're not asking whether particles have minds. We're asking whether the universe's deepest foundations contain the faintest traces of the thing that later becomes mind. Whether the responsiveness of particles, their sensitivity to interactions, their transitions from possibility to actuality, might hint at a universe quietly prepared for awareness long before awareness emerged. As we continue this journey, we will carry this idea gently with us, not as a claim, but as a lens. It lets us see the universe as something that has always been leaning toward awareness, always moving from simple to complex, from dispersed to integrated, from silent to softly speaking. The quantum world may be the first whisper of this long and quiet story. If you close your eyes for a moment and imagine the universe not as a place filled with objects, but as a place filled with patterns, you might begin to sense the deeper thread running through everything. Patterns of light reaching across space, patterns of atoms arranging themselves into crystals, then cells, then minds, patterns of stars clustering into spirals and filaments. And beneath all of these patterns, like a quiet pulse, lies something more subtle: information. Information is not a technical term here. It is not the kind of information stored on a computer or written in a string of code. Instead, think of it as the shape of possibility, the specific way something in the universe holds or expresses what it has encountered. A tree does not keep a diary, but its rings store memories of dry seasons, storms, and sunlight. A river does not write stories, but its curves hold the imprint of centuries spent carving its path through earth and stone. Everywhere you look, the world is full of traces, echoes, and gentle records of what has unfolded. In that sense, information is the universe's memory. It is how events leave marks, how patterns persist, how one moment influences the next. You can see it in the grooves of an old wooden table, in the way a mountain carries the scars of ancient glaciers, in the soft outline of a cloud shaped by shifting winds. And just as memory helps a person know themselves, information helps the universe know its own past, not consciously but structurally through the way things are arranged, connected, and shaped. Physicists have long suspected that information is far more fundamental than it appears. Whenever something happens, the universe registers it. When a particle interacts with another particle, when a bit of light touches a surface, when a star collapses into a dense point, information is carried forward. Even places that seem silent, like the void between galaxies, hold delicate fingerprints of ancient radiation, whispers from the beginning of time that still drift across space. Perhaps the most dramatic example of this lies in the strange behavior of black holes. For decades, scientists thought that anything falling into a black hole simply vanished. Matter, energy, and all the information about what it once was. But then came the unsettling realization that information does not seem to disappear so easily. Even when matter falls into a black hole, some imprint of what entered must remain, encoded faintly in the edges of space itself. It is as if the universe refuses to forget. Every event, no matter how small or distant, leaves a trace behind. This does not mean the universe is keeping track the way a mind does, but it suggests something quietly profound. Information is woven into the essence of reality, like threads in a vast tapestry. And if information is everywhere, and if everything responds to information in some way, then the universe begins to resemble a giant network, one where each part influences others, carrying signals, shifting patterns, and shaping the whole. To feel this more deeply, imagine the universe as a great forest. Each tree stands on its own, but underground, networks of roots and fungi connect them. Through those roots, nutrients flow, warnings spread. A fire in one part of the forest sends signals to another. The forest as a whole responds, adapts, and learns, not through a central mind, but through a web of interactions that holds information and passes it along. Or imagine a coastline. Each wave carries memory of winds far away, of distant storms, of the moon's pull. When it rises and falls on the shore, it brings that memory with it. The coastline changes slowly over time, responding to every tide, every current, every shift. In that movement, the ocean is not conscious, but it is expressive. It reflects what has happened, and it influences what will happen next. In the cosmic sense, information works much like those roots or waves. It spreads, accumulates, organises and shapes. When matter clumps together, information is there. When stars ignite, information is there. When galaxies stretch into long glowing filaments that span millions of light years, information is there too, encoded in the very structure of space. Some researchers describe the universe as if it were performing a kind of computation, not the cold, digital kind, but a natural one, made of interactions and consequences. When two things meet, the universe updates itself. This update is not a calculation in the human sense. It is simply the way reality incorporates what has happened. It is the unfolding of cause and effect, of connection, of response. What does this have to do with awareness? Perhaps awareness in its earliest form is simply the ability to respond to information. A plant turning toward light is responding. A cell moving toward nutrients or away from danger is responding. Even the smallest particles, in their own minimal way, respond to what touches them. Their interactions carry meaning, not human meaning, but the quiet meaning of presence and change. If we think of awareness as responsiveness, then it is not hard to imagine how higher forms of awareness might emerge from this universal foundation. As systems grow more complex, their ability to integrate information grows. Instead of responding to one type of signal, they respond to many, weaving them together into richer patterns. A simple organism responds to its environment. A more complex one responds to its surroundings and to signals within itself. A human mind responds not only to the world, but to thoughts, memories, emotions, and stories. The deeper the integration, the richer the awareness becomes. This brings us to a gentle possibility. If the universe is filled with information, and if it continually responds to that information, then the universe behaves, at least metaphorically, like something that knows in a structural sense. Not knows as a mind knows, but knows through the way its patterns preserve meaning and guide evolution. A river that remembers its path, a star that remembers its formation through its layers, a galaxy that remembers its collisions in the shapes of its spirals. Perhaps the universe is not a giant mind in the human sense, but perhaps it is not an empty machine either. It might be something in between, an enormous field of responsiveness, where information flows like breath, where events ripple outward in waves of influence, and where the story of everything is written in patterns that span billions of years. As we continue our journey, this idea will help us connect the smallest stirrings of quantum particles with the grand architecture of cosmic webs. For now, it is enough to rest with the thought that information is not just a concept. It is the language of the universe, soft, ancient, and everywhere. If you watch a flock of birds circling above a field at dusk, you'll notice something quietly astonishing. Each bird flaps its wings, adjusts its path, and makes small choices based only on the birds immediately around it. Yet, when you step back and look at the whole sky, the flock seems to move as one creature, stretching, folding, spiraling, flowing. No single bird is in charge and no bird sees the full pattern. The shape simply emerges from their collective motion, like a breath shared across hundreds of small beating hearts. This gentle moment is a doorway into one of the most important ideas in our journey, emergence. Emergence is what happens when simple parts come together in such rich and interconnected ways that something entirely new appears, something that none of the parts possess on their own. A single neuron cannot think, but billions of neurons connected together create the tapestry of your mind. One drop of water cannot form a wave, but countless droplets moving in harmony can shape the rise and fall of the ocean. Emergence is the universe's quiet way of creating complexity from simplicity, making new layers of order that feel almost like magic, even though they arise from ordinary interactions. It's the shift from basic behaviors to patterns that feel alive, meaningful, and sometimes even intelligent. To feel this more clearly, imagine the internet at night. Somewhere, a person sends a message. That message jumps between servers, crossing cities and oceans. At the same moment, a million other connections pulse across the network. Video calls, search queries, songs being streamed, satellites passing data back to the ground. None of these machines know the full picture. Each simply follows its own small instructions. Send this, receive that. But when you look at the whole system, the internet behaves almost like a weather pattern. Fluid, dynamic, unpredictable. A shape made not of clouds, but of connections. The same is true of your mind. Every thought you have, every memory, every feeling is produced by countless neurons exchanging tiny signals. Each neuron can only talk to the few neighbours around it, like a bird responding to the movements of its flock. But when these small messages weave together, they create something vast and interior, the experience of being you. This experience is not in any single neuron. It emerges from the whole network, the way a story emerges from the arrangement of letters on a page. Emergence helps us understand how consciousness might arise from matter without needing a special spark. Instead of being added suddenly, consciousness could be the natural result of complexity reaching a certain depth, a depth where information flows not just between parts, but across the entire system in an integrated, harmonious way. Now imagine stepping even further back, past the level of brains, past the level of cities and ecosystems, and looking at the universe itself. Galaxies stretch across space in delicate filaments, forming patterns that resemble threads in a cosmic web. These filaments are not random. They connect clusters of galaxies, each cluster containing billions of stars. From afar, they look strangely like neural networks, not because the universe is a brain, but because nature tends to reuse the same shapes when building complexity. Lines of connection, branching structures, networks of influence. When we look at this immense cosmic web, we're not just seeing stars and gas. We are seeing a large-scale pattern created by gravity, dark matter, and cosmic expansion, forces woven together in a dance that began more than 13 billion years ago. Yet from this dance emerges a structure that almost feels like an idea, coherent, intricate, and deeply interconnected. You could think of it as the universe's signature, the vast pattern that appears when matter and time intertwine. It is tempting, when looking at such a structure, to ask whether emergence happens not only in biological systems but also at cosmic scales. Could the universe, taken as a whole, possess properties that no individual part has? Could it integrate information, respond to changes, or maintain patterns the way a living system does? This question is not as far-fetched as it may sound. Consider an anthill. If you look at a single ant wandering across a leaf, it appears small and simple. But if you zoom out and observe the entire colony, you see a living system, gathering food, regulating temperature, building tunnels, coordinating defences. The ants do not decide these things consciously, but together they create a higher level intelligence that belongs to the colony, not the individual. Some scientists and philosophers wonder whether the universe could be like that anthill, an immense, interconnected structure where simple parts, interacting through physical laws, create patterns of behaviour that are more than the sum of their parts. Not a mind in the human sense, but a system with its own form of coherence, its own awareness, expressed through stability, order, and evolution. To bring this into an everyday image, think of a campfire at night. A fire is made of sparks, embers, flickers of flame. Each spark is small, brief, and simple. But when the sparks join, the fire behaves like something alive. It dances, it breathes, it grows and shrinks. The fire is not conscious, yet it has a kind of presence that emerges from countless interactions happening instantly and continuously. The universe might be similar, countless small events, collisions of particles, the birth of stars, the merging of galaxies, all interacting to create a vast evolving pattern. From this pattern, new layers of order emerge: the formation of elements, the chemistry of life, the architecture of neural networks, the rise of awareness, and eventually the ability of that awareness to reflect on the universe itself. Emergence helps us understand how each of these layers can arise without needing to be designed from above. Complexity grows, slowly, step by step, until new qualities appear. Qualities that cannot be predicted simply by looking at the parts. No single grain of sand tells you how a dune will shift. No single drop of water tells you how a river will bend. And no single neuron tells you how a mind will dream. If emergence can create minds from matter, then we can gently wonder whether emergence at the cosmic scale might create something larger. A universe that through its own structure holds a kind of awareness. Not awareness with thoughts or goals, but awareness as coherence, responsiveness, and unity. Awareness is the way the whole system holds itself together. And so, as we take this idea with us, we do not claim the universe thinks or feels. We simply acknowledge that the universe is the most complex system we know, far more complex than a brain, an anthill, or a flock of birds. If complexity gives rise to new kinds of knowing, then the universe itself might contain possibilities that lie far beyond what we can yet imagine. If you could drift far above the Milky Way, far above all the spiraling arms and drifting clouds of starlight, you would eventually see something astonishing. Not a random scatter of galaxies, but a structure so vast and delicate that it feels almost like a hidden signature left by the universe itself. It is called the cosmic web, and it stretches across the entire observable universe like a glowing lattice, a pattern made of clusters, filaments, and immense empty spaces. From this height, the universe does not look chaotic. It looks organized, almost purposeful, as if shaped by a quiet intelligence woven through gravity and time. The cosmic web is made of countless galaxies linked together by long threads of matter, threads that, from a distance, resemble the branching of neurons or the roots of ancient trees. These filaments are not small. Each one can span hundreds of millions of light years, yet they are just strands in a larger interconnected network. When astronomers first mapped the distribution of galaxies, they expected something random, like dust scattered into the wind. Instead, they found something that looked almost alive. This resemblance invites a gentle metaphor. If the universe were a mind, then the cosmic web might be its architecture, the shape of its interconnectedness. Not a literal brain with signals firing, but a system where matter flows, information is carried, and patterns persist over billions of years. The universe does not think through this structure, but it expresses something through it, a unity that emerges from countless interactions between matter, gravity, and time. To feel this more deeply, imagine standing on a hill at night, watching city lights stretch toward the horizon. From up close, each building, each street lamp, each window seems isolated. But when you stand far enough away, the lights connect into patterns, grids, clusters, veins of brightness running along roads. The city reveals a higher level structure that no single light creates on its own. The cosmic web is like that, except the lights are galaxies, and the pattern spans the universe. The question that often arises when people see this structure is simple. Why does the universe look this way? Why not scattered dots, or smooth clouds, or something shapeless? The answer lies in the interaction of gravity and the tiny fluctuations left over from the earliest moments after the universe began. Over billions of years, these slight variations were amplified, drawing matter together into long strands and nodal clusters. But the explanation, while scientifically accurate, does not diminish the sense of wonder. Instead, it deepens it. Even from simple rules, astonishing patterns can arise. When we think about awareness, the cosmic web becomes even more intriguing. Awareness, in its simplest form, requires structure. Connections that allow information to travel and integrate. A single neuron is quiet. 1,000 neurons begin to communicate. 1 billion neurons generate the symphony of a mind. The cosmic web is not conscious in the human sense, but it is undeniably structured. It carries information across unimaginable distances, encoded in gravity, light, and the movement of galaxies. It is, in a sense, the universe's way of holding itself together. One way to imagine this is to picture a spider's web at dawn. The strands are thin and delicate, but when a single droplet touches the web, the entire structure responds. Vibrations ripple outward, carrying information from one end to another. The web itself does not think, but it is sensitive, tense, and unified. The cosmic web behaves in a similar way. When massive objects collide or stars explode, the effects ripple across space. Gravity stretches, light bends, matter shifts. The universe absorbs the change and folds it into its evolving shape. These ripples happen on timescales far beyond any human lifetime. A single wave of influence might take millions of years to cross a filament. But awareness does not need speed. It needs connection. And connection is something the cosmic web has in overwhelming abundance. Another way to approach the idea is through the movement of matter. Over time, gas flows through the filaments of the cosmic web like water, travelling through the channels of a vast landscape. Stars are born in these flows. Galaxies merge, collide, and grow along them. In this slow-motion choreography, the universe organises itself, creating regions of great richness and regions of emptiness. Even the voids, the dark, quiet spaces between filaments, play a role. They push matter outward, helping shape the web's form, much like the hollow spaces inside a shell help determine the shell's final shape. Some scientists suggest that the cosmic web operates almost like a nervous system, at a scale far beyond biology. Not because it thinks, but because it channels, transmits, and integrates change. If the universe were ever to have something like a self, this network would be part of its body, the place where its history is stored, where its structure evolves, and where its vastness expresses itself. This brings us to a quiet question. If awareness arises from complexity, then what happens when complexity reaches cosmic proportions? The human brain contains around 86 billion neurons. The universe contains trillions of galaxies arranged in delicate networks. The brain processes chemical and electrical signals. The universe processes gravity, light, and the motion of matter. These comparisons are not meant to prove anything. They simply invite wonder. They remind us that the universe is not just big, it is patterned, structured, and deeply interconnected. As you imagine the cosmic web stretching across the darkness, think of it not as a map of galaxies, but as a map of relationships. Every filament holds the memory of ancient interactions. Every cluster tells the story of billions of stars born from the same rivers of matter. The universe is not chaotic, it is expressive. It shapes, connects, reorganizes, and evolves. Whether this organization hints at a form of awareness is a question we cannot answer, but it opens a doorway to a gentler idea. Perhaps the universe does not need a mind to feel connected. Perhaps connection itself is the beginning of something like knowing. And so, as we continue our journey, we will carry with us the image of the cosmic web, not as a brain, but as a reflection of the universe's ability to weave itself into patterns. Patterns that have lasted for billions of years. Patterns that include us as small sparks of awareness within a much larger unfolding. When you think about what it feels like to be conscious, to sense warmth on your skin, to hear the soft hum of a fan, or to hold a memory gently in your mind, you're touching something that is both simple and mysterious. Consciousness feels unified. It feels whole. Even though your brain contains billions of neurons firing in countless tiny bursts, what you experience is not a collection of sparks. You experience a single, continuous field of awareness, woven together so smoothly that all its parts feel inseparable. This seamless unity is at the heart of a modern idea that tries to explain consciousness not as a switch, but as a kind of deep integration. Some scientists propose that consciousness arises when the elements of a system are bound together so tightly, so thoroughly, that the system cannot be broken into independent parts without losing something essential. It is not the number of parts that matters, but how deeply they depend on one another. To picture this softly, imagine a choir standing in a dimly lit hall. If each singer hums quietly alone, you hear scattered notes floating through the air. But when they begin to sing together, harmonies aligned, breaths synchronized, voices blending, the sound becomes something more than a collection of separate tones. It becomes a single shape of music, rich and textured, impossible to reduce to individual voices without losing the essence of the experience. The music has become one. A conscious system in this gentle metaphor is like that choir. Each element, whether it is a neuron, a circuit, or a cluster of cells, contributes its own small part. But the consciousness you feel is not in any single element. It is in the way all the parts weave their signals into a unified pattern. The deeper the weaving, the richer the awareness. Some researchers describe this unity with a single descriptive idea: how deeply a system is woven into itself. They imagine, quietly and without the need for formulas, that if a system cannot be split apart without destroying the pattern of its interactions, then that system has some degree of inner experience. It has a quality of being one thing, even if made from many components. To make this clearer, compare two images in your mind. First, picture a handful of loose threads. They may lie near one another, but they do not form anything. They can be separated easily without losing structure, because there is no structure to lose. Now, picture a tapestry where those threads are interlaced tightly in a complex pattern. Pull one thread out, and the tapestry begins to unravel. The pattern depends on the whole. If consciousness is like a tapestry, then any system capable of binding its parts into an inseparable pattern might have an inner side, an echo of experience. In our daily lives, we can feel this difference through simple objects. Take a basic sensor, a small device that notices light or temperature. It responds, but only in one direction. Light comes in, a signal goes out. It does not integrate information. It merely reacts. Its threads are loose. Now think of a brain, or even something simpler, like a tiny octopus navigating the patterns of a coral reef. In these systems, signals travel in many directions. Past events shape future responses. Learning and memory bend the system into new forms. The threads are tightly woven. This modern perspective does not claim that consciousness is magical or mysterious. Instead, it suggests that consciousness may be what reality feels like from the inside when information flows richly within a system. Just as music emerges from the blending of voices, experience may emerge from the blending of signals. No single signal contains awareness. Awareness belongs to the pattern as a whole. But there is something gentle we must acknowledge. This idea remains controversial. Some scientists appreciate its simplicity, its way of grounding consciousness in the structure of networks. Others worry that it stretches the idea too far, implying that any sufficiently interconnected system, even a grid of electronics or a network of switches, might possess a flicker of experience. The truth is still unfolding, but the beauty of this perspective lies not in certainty, but in the way it invites us to imagine consciousness as something natural, woven into the fabric of complexity itself. To understand this in more familiar terms, imagine the difference between a candle and a bonfire. A candle flame is small, contained. A bonfire, fed by many branches, roars with heat and colour. If consciousness is like fire, then systems with deeper integration may burn brighter on the inside. Systems with minimal integration may glow faintly, like embers. This does not mean machines have feelings, or that stones dream. simply means the universe might express degrees of inner life depending on how its parts hold together. This idea brings us back to a softer, deeper question. If consciousness emerges from integration, then is the universe itself integrated? Does it hold together in a way that could give rise to something like experience? Not in the human sense, but in the sense of unity and response. The cosmic web, the flow of matter, the deep interplay of physical laws, all of these may be part of a vast pattern woven over billions of years. Perhaps awareness is not something that appears suddenly, but something that deepens as patterns grow more connected. We do not need an answer tonight. The purpose of these reflections is not to solve consciousness, but to loosen our grip on the idea that mind and world must be separate. If experience arises from the way things connect, then connection itself becomes sacred, intricate, and full of possibility. A universe that integrates itself deeply might, in some quiet way, carry its own form of presence. And just as a choir becomes one voice through the joining of many, the universe might carry a whisper of unity through the countless interactions that bind it together, from the smallest particles to the networks of brains to the cosmic architecture stretching across space. If you sit by a quiet window at night and look out across a dark landscape, you might notice tiny points of light scattered across the distance. A porch lamp here, a faint window glow there, maybe the warm shimmer of a home tucked behind trees. Each light is small, self-contained, and seemingly unrelated to the others. But when you soften your gaze, the scene begins to feel connected, as if these scattered lights form a faint constellation across the land. This gentle image captures the spirit of a very old idea with a modern heartbeat, the idea that awareness might exist everywhere, in different degrees, like lights glowing across the universe. This perspective is known as panpsychism, though the word itself can sound more complicated than the idea. In its simplest form, panpsychism suggests that consciousness, or at least a tiny seed of experience, is a fundamental aspect of reality, not something that emerges suddenly when matter becomes complex enough, but something that exists in a quiet form at every level, like the smallest hint of warmth in a room long before the fire is lit. To understand this softly, imagine a spectrum of light stretching from deep indigo to radiant gold. At the golden end, you find the human mind, full of colour and depth, capable of joy, curiosity, sadness, imagination. At the far indigo end, you find the faintest whisper of responsiveness, a kind of inner dimness so subtle that it might not resemble anything we normally call experience. Panpsychism invites us to consider that everything in the universe lies somewhere on this spectrum, not equally aware, not equally alive, but touched by the same fundamental spark. This does not mean that rocks have thoughts, or that atoms whisper secrets to one another. Instead, it means that the difference between simple matter and conscious mind might not be a difference of kind, but a difference of degree. Just as warmth increases as more heat flows into a room, awareness might increase as matter becomes more integrated, more connected, more capable of responding in complex ways. To picture this another way, imagine a piece of metal lying in the cold. At first, it feels lifeless, but if you warm it slowly, gently, degree by degree, the metal begins to change. It becomes pliable. Eventually it glows. Nothing magical is added from outside. The glow comes from the metal itself, awakened by heat. Panpsychism imagines consciousness in a similar way. A glow that grows stronger as systems become more complex, more intertwined, more capable of holding themselves together. Why would anyone consider such an idea? One reason is the puzzle at the heart of consciousness, the puzzle of how inner experience arises from matter. If consciousness appears suddenly only in certain systems, like brains, we are left with a large and difficult question. How do completely non-experiencing things give rise to something as rich as a conscious mind? But if consciousness is present in faint, quiet forms throughout the universe, then the emergence of complex consciousness becomes less mysterious. It becomes a matter of gradual transformation, not sudden creation. Yet panpsychism carries its own quiet challenge. If everything has some trace of experience, however faint, how do those tiny traces combine to form the unified consciousness we know? This is sometimes called the combination problem. If each part of a system has its own spark, how do these sparks merge into one flame? How does the awareness of individual neurons blend into the single field of experience you call me? This is not an easy question, and philosophers still explore it with care. Some imagine that the sparks merge naturally when the system reaches a certain level of integration. Others suggest that the sparks were never separate to begin with, that the parts are always expressions of a deeper unity. But even as these discussions continue, the appeal of panpsychism remains strong because it offers a picture of the universe that feels both gentle and continuous. A universe where consciousness does not erupt out of nowhere but unfolds gradually, like dawn spreading across a dark horizon. To bring this image closer to everyday experience, imagine lighting a line of candles. Each candle holds its own small flame, but together they create a continuous glow, illuminating the room in a way no single candle could. Awareness in this view might be similar. Each part of nature carries a tiny spark, and when these sparks gather in complex structures, like brains or even ecosystems, they create something brighter, something we recognize as conscious experience. Panpsychism also invites us to reconsider the relationship between mind and matter. Instead of seeing consciousness as a late arrival in a purely physical universe, this perspective suggests that consciousness and matter may be two sides of the same coin, always intertwined. Matter is the outer form. Awareness is the inner texture. Everything has both, just in different proportions. This way of thinking does not diminish the wonder of human consciousness. Instead, it places that wonder within a larger context, as part of a universe that has been nurturing the possibility of experience since its earliest moments. It paints a picture of reality that is not cold or empty, but softly lit from within. There is a quiet comfort in this, especially at night. If the universe carries awareness in some small way, then your own consciousness is not an anomaly or an accident. It is part of a larger flow, a continuation of something ancient. Your thoughts, your feelings, your moments of clarity or confusion, they all belong to a spectrum that stretches across the cosmos. And as we move forward into deeper questions, into cosmopsychism, into the idea of a universe-wide mind, panpsychism gives us a stepping stone. It helps us imagine how consciousness might be scattered like seeds throughout reality, waiting for the right conditions to bloom. It allows us to picture awareness not as an isolated flame, but as a constellation of glimmers, woven into everything from particles to people, from small stones to spiraling galaxies. Perhaps, in the grand view, consciousness is not a rare treasure. Perhaps it is the universe slowly learning to recognize itself, one spark at a time. There is a gentle shift that happens when you move from thinking about tiny sparks of awareness scattered through reality to imagining one vast unified field of consciousness. Instead of countless small lights glowing faintly, you begin to picture a single, radiant presence, something enormous and deep, stretching from one end of existence to the other. This shift lies at the heart of cosmopsychism, the idea that the universe itself may be the fundamental bearer of consciousness, and that individual minds, yours, mine, every mind, are local expressions of this greater whole. To step into this idea softly, imagine standing at the edge of an ocean at dawn. The waves roll in, each one separate, each with its own timing and shape, yet all of them are the ocean. The identity of each wave, its crest, its foam, its rhythm, is a temporary expression of something much larger, something continuous. Cosmopsychism invites us to imagine ourselves and every conscious being as waves on the surface of a cosmic ocean. We rise, we fall, and our individuality is real, but we are always part of the greater water beneath. This perspective does not diminish the uniqueness of personal experience. Instead, it offers a way to understand how unity and individuality can coexist. Each wave is distinct, yet inseparable from the sea. Each branch of an ancient tree grows in its own direction, yet all branches are nourished by the same trunk. Each thought in a dream has its own shape and feeling, yet every thought is part of the same dreaming mind. Cosmopsychism suggests that consciousness works the same way. Rather than countless small bits of awareness merging into a unified mind, a process that raises many philosophical puzzles, this view begins from the other end. It proposes that the universe began with a single, unified consciousness, and that individual minds are differentiations within it. We are branches of a shared root, ripples of a shared field, sparks from a shared flame. This idea appeals to some philosophers because it avoids a subtle problem found in panpsychism. If every tiny particle has its own faint awareness, how do these tiny experiences blend into the unified, vivid consciousness we each feel? Cosmopsychism turns the question upside down. Instead of asking how small minds combine into bigger ones, it asks how a big mind expresses itself in smaller forms, how unity gives rise to multiplicity, how the whole reveals itself in parts. To illustrate this gently, imagine a vast mural painted on the side of a building. Up close, you see individual strokes of colour: blue, gold, red, green. Each stroke is separate, but each is also part of a larger picture. When you step back, the mural becomes a single image. The strokes do not need to combine themselves. They were always part of the same design. Your consciousness, in this view, is like one brushstroke in the mural of the universe's mind. Of course, cosmopsychism is not a scientific theory in the strict sense. It does not come with measurements or instruments. It is a philosophical idea, one that arises from the desire to make sense of consciousness without splitting it into countless fragments. But like many philosophical ideas, it resonates with patterns we see in nature. Consider the networks we talked about earlier. Forests that communicate through underground roots, cities connected through roads, and lights, brains woven together with neural pathways. In each of these systems, the whole behaves in ways that exceed the behavior of the individual parts. A brain is not simply a collection of neurons, it is a unified field of experience. A forest is not simply a collection of trees. It has rhythms, cycles, and resilience that come from its interconnectedness. Likewise, cosmopsychism imagines that the universe is not merely a collection of galaxies and particles, but a unified presence expressed in countless forms. Some people find comfort in this idea because it suggests that consciousness is not an accident. It suggests that when minds appear, whether in humans, animals, or any beings elsewhere in the cosmos, they do so because the universe itself has always held the potential for awareness. Consciousness is not an isolated spark flickering in a dark void. It is part of a vast continuum, like the glow of stars along the arm of a galaxy. Others appreciate cosmopsychism because it invites a feeling of connection. If all minds are expressions of a greater whole, then no mind is truly separate. Our experiences may differ, but we share the same underlying source. This does not blur individuality. Instead, it frames individuality within a larger unity, like voices in a choir singing different notes that harmonize into one song. Still, cosmopsychism also raises questions. If the universe is conscious, why does this cosmic consciousness not feel immediate to us? Why do we experience ourselves as separate beings rather than as facets of a unified mind? This is where analogies help once again. A dream contains many characters, settings, and emotions, yet all of them arise from the same consciousness, the dreamer. The characters within the dream do not perceive the dreamer directly. They perceive only their own experiences, Cosmopsychism imagines something similar. The universe may hold a unified presence, but individual minds perceive only their local expression of that presence. This is not presented as fact, only as possibility, a gentle thought experiment that helps us navigate the mystery of our own awareness. But even as a possibility, it invites us to rethink what it means to be conscious. Instead of imagining ourselves as isolated islands of awareness floating in a silent universe, Cosmopsychism paints a more connected picture. A picture where mind is not a small, rare event, but a vast ocean from which individual experiences arise and into which they eventually recede. As you let this image settle, imagine yourself once more on the shore at dawn. The sky brightens, waves roll in. Each wave is brief, yet the ocean is timeless. Each wave has its own shape, yet all belong to the same boundless water. If consciousness is like that ocean, then each moment of awareness, each breath, each memory, each heartbeat is a small expression of something far larger than you, something ancient and continuous. This does not answer every question, but it offers a way to hold the mystery gently. Instead of trying to reduce consciousness to mechanisms or to elevate it to magic, Cosmopsychism sits somewhere in between, inviting us to imagine a universe where awareness is not an afterthought, but a foundation. A universe where being aware does not make us separate from reality, but deeply, intimately part of it. When we think about perception, our minds usually drift toward familiar images, eyes opening to morning light, ears catching the distant hum of traffic, skin registering the warmth of a cup held between our hands. These are the ways living creatures sense the world, through organs shaped by millions of years of evolution. If we imagine consciousness without these sensory windows, the image becomes harder to hold. What does it mean for something to be aware without eyes or ears? What could perception look like on a scale so large that no creature, no matter how ancient or vast, could ever evolve biological senses? To explore this idea gently, we begin by loosening our attachment to sense organs. After all, awareness does not always need to take the form of sight or sound. Even for humans, very little of our experience comes from vision or hearing alone. Much of what we perceive is internal, thoughts drifting, intuitions rising, the subtle way our bodies respond to emotions we cannot name. A universe that perceived without senses might experience in a way closer to these inner shifts, a kind of awareness based on integration rather than sensation. To feel into this possibility, imagine a large lake at dawn. The lake does not see the mountains that surround it, but when the wind touches its surface, ripples spread outward. When a leaf falls, the lake registers the disturbance. When a fish swims in its depths, the water adjusts, folding and unfolding around the movement. The lake has no eyes, yet it feels every change through the patterns that travel across it. Its awareness, if we can call it that, is not about recognizing objects, but about being responsive to the flow of information passing through it. Now imagine the universe as something like that lake, an immense field where every event sends ripples across the fabric of reality. When particles collide, when stars ignite, when galaxies merge and stretch, the universe adjusts, reshapes, and carries the imprint of those events forward. It does not perceive through senses, it perceives through change. Quantum interactions offer a gentle example. When two particles meet, they do not see each other, but they exchange information. Their states shift, their histories become entangled. This is perception at its smallest scale, not sight, not sound, but a delicate responsiveness to interaction. A universe-wide awareness, if it exists, might work in a similar way, through the deep responsiveness of its physical laws. Another metaphor helps. Think of a spider's web stretched across a quiet corner of a forest. The web itself is not alive in the usual sense. It has no eyes or ears, but when something touches it, When a slight vibration travels across its strands, the entire structure changes. Even the smallest movement is reflected throughout. The universe, with its interwoven chains of cause and effect, behaves in a similar way. Every event, no matter how small, sends influences outward. Gravity shifts, light bends, space stretches, time adjusts. This kind of responsiveness is not emotional, nor is it conscious in the human sense, but it is a form of perception. A cosmic mind, if such a thing exists, might not perceive individual objects as we do. Instead, it might perceive patterns, the distribution of matter, the spread of energy, the slow arcs of galaxies drifting apart, the quiet settling of gravity shaping clusters of stars. Perception, at this scale, would be more like feeling the shape of existence through its own structure. Information flows support this idea. Everywhere in the universe, information travels. It moves in the light from stars, in the ripples of gravitational waves, in the delicate shift of particles responding to one another. If the universe were conscious, it would not perceive through sense organs, but through the way information threads across its body, the way a tree perceives sunlight through its leaves, or the way an ecosystem perceives imbalance through countless interconnected signals. Physical laws also offer a form of self-consistency that resembles awareness in the gentlest way. Laws of nature do not change from place to place. They are stable, steady, and uniform. When conditions shift, the laws guide the response, holding the universe in a coherent form. This stability is not intelligence, but it is a kind of self-maintenance. A conscious universe might perceive through this very stability, by integrating events into its ongoing order. Consider gravitational waves, those soft ripples that travel through space-time after massive objects like stars or black holes collide. These waves stretch and compress space itself as they move. If the universe were aware, these waves might be part of what it feels, like tremors passing through a vast ocean. Not a sensation in the human sense, but a whole-body awareness of movement, change, and impact. The births and deaths of stars could offer another layer of perception. When a star forms within a swirling cloud of gas, the universe shifts its balance of light and mass. When a star dies and collapses, releasing energy across space, the universe changes again. These are not sensations, they are adjustments, vast, slow, but deeply integrated. A cosmic mind might not see a star, but it would know the event through the way it alters the fabric of everything. This style of perception is not about observing objects, it is about integrating interactions, not about focusing on one thing, but about holding the whole. Awareness at this scale would not be like looking through a window, but like feeling the temperature of a room by being part of the air itself. To understand this more personally, you can think about your own experience when you close your eyes and simply feel your body. You're not seeing your surroundings or hearing precise details. You're sensing through presence, through subtle vibrations, quiet pressures, and gentle shifts. A cosmic mind might function in a similar way, a presence spread across the entirety of existence, responding to its own unfolding, adjusting in a constant flow. It is important to remember that this is a metaphor, not a claim. The universe may not be conscious at all, but by imagining how a consciousness without senses would experience reality, we give ourselves a new way to think about the universe, not as a cold expanse, but as something capable of an interior dimension, one that does not depend on eyes, ears, or touch. A universe that perceives through integration rather than sensation, through patterns rather than objects, through unity rather than parts. Perhaps awareness, in its deepest form, is not about seeing or hearing. Perhaps it is about being so completely woven into the flow of existence that everything resonates, everything registers, everything is felt as part of the same unfolding story. There is a quiet thought that appears when you trace the journey of matter, from simple particles to atoms to cells to minds capable of wondering about their own existence. It is a thought Carl Sagan once expressed with a kind of gentle awe. We are a way for the cosmos to know itself. If you follow this line of thinking softly without forcing conclusions, it begins to feel less like poetry and more like a natural continuation of everything we've explored so far. Imagine for a moment a single seed lying in the soil. At first, it is simple, quiet, unaware, but inside it is a blueprint, a hidden potential waiting for warmth and water. When the right conditions arrive, the seed splits, stretches and reaches upward. A sprout becomes a stem, the stem becomes a tree, the tree becomes a forest. What was once small and silent becomes tall enough to sway in the wind, wide enough to shelter birds, strong enough to shape the landscape around it. Nothing in the first seed could show you the future fullness of the tree, and yet the tree was inside it all along. Some thinkers imagine the universe in a similar way. In the earliest moments after the cosmos began, everything was simple, silent, formless, filled with raw potential. Over billions of years, that potential unfolded into stars, galaxies, planets, oceans, and eventually life. And from life came awareness, and from awareness came reflection. What began as simple structures slowly gave rise to something capable of asking questions, capable of wondering, capable of listening to the quiet hum of existence. If you imagine the universe as a seed, then consciousness, especially the reflective consciousness of humans, might be the flowering of that seed. Not separate from the cosmos, but the cosmos reaching a stage where it can look back at itself with curiosity. To sit with this idea, imagine a morning when you wake before sunrise. The room is dim. The world outside is still. For a few moments, you're not thinking of yesterday or today. You are simply present, breathing, sensing, aware of awareness itself. In that early light, consciousness feels less like a personal possession and more like a quiet field that opens and closes around you. It feels universal, as though you're borrowing something ancient, something that lives beneath thoughts and memories. If consciousness arises from the universe, then moments like that, moments of simple presence, may be moments where you sense the deeper continuum between yourself and everything around you. The atoms in your body were once inside stars. The water in your blood once drifted through clouds. The light entering your eyes has travelled across space. You're not merely in the universe. You are made of it, shaped by it, carried forward by it. Perhaps this is why so many people, across cultures and history, have felt that awareness connects them to something vast. Not because they understood the physics of starlight or the chemistry of life, but because consciousness itself feels spacious. It does not end at the edges of your skin. It radiates outward, touching the world in ways that are hard to describe. To approach this idea from another angle, picture the Earth as seen from far above, a blue sphere suspended in darkness, wrapped in clouds and light. Every person who has ever lived, every thought ever formed, every story ever told, all of it happened on that small, bright circle. And yet, from within our daily routines, we rarely feel this unity. We move through hallways, sit in cars, walk across streets, each carrying our own concerns. But from space, there is no separation. There is only one world, one atmosphere, one continuous swirl of a life. If consciousness arises from this planet shaped by the chemistry of oceans and the warmth of sunlight, then every mind is a small window through which the Earth experiences itself. And because the Earth is part of the universe, each mind becomes, in a very quiet sense, a window through which the universe gazes back. To bring this closer, imagine a child standing under the night sky, looking upward with wide eyes. The stars seem impossibly far away. yet the child feels a pull toward them, a curiosity older than language. That pull might be the echo of something deep within us, a memory carried by stardust, a resonance between our awareness and the cosmos that shaped it. In moments like that, the question is not whether the universe is aware, but whether awareness is the universe's way of continuing its own story through us. There is a soft humility in this perspective. It does not claim that humans are the centre of anything. It suggests the opposite, that we are small, temporary, and deeply connected to a larger unfolding. Our awareness may not belong to us alone. It may be a local expression of something much older, like a tide pool reflecting the colour of the ocean at dawn. If this is true, then human consciousness is not an isolated miracle. It is the universe learning, through billions of tiny electrical pulses and chemical patterns, what it feels like to be alive. Every question you ask, every wonder you feel, every moment of stillness or creativity or confusion, these might be the universe exploring itself through the fragile medium of your mind. The thought is neither mystical nor scientific. It is simply a possibility, one that feels both intimate and immense, and it invites a gentle shift in how we see ourselves. Instead of being observers standing apart from the cosmos, we become participants. Instead of being minds inside a universe, we become folds within its awareness. Whether or not the universe is conscious in any literal sense, one thing is certain. We're the part of the universe that notices beauty, seeks meaning, tells stories, and listens to silence. We are the part of the universe that asks questions like the ones we're exploring tonight, and perhaps that is enough to say that through us, the universe is waking up a little, stretching into awareness, flickering into reflection, opening its eyes through ours. If you imagine, just for a quiet moment, that the universe has even the faintest whisper of awareness, whether through its complexity, its patterns, or the delicate ways it responds to change, then a gentle question rises. What does it mean to live inside something that might, in some way, be alive? Not alive like a creature or a person, but alive in the sense of being connected, responsive, and infused with an inwardness we do not fully understand. This question is not meant to be heavy or philosophical in a strict sense. It's more like the feeling you get when walking alone through an old forest. You sense that the world around you is not just a backdrop. It has presence. It listens in its own way. It holds histories in its bark, its soil, its quiet shifting shadows. If the universe carries even a small form of inner life, then everything we do happens inside a kind of vast, unfolding being. What would that ask of us? To explore this softly, imagine the universe as a great tapestry, threads woven through billions of years, each one representing a galaxy, a star, a life, a moment. When you touch the tapestry, even lightly, the fabric shifts everywhere. Your actions ripple through the system, changing the relationships between threads. Ethics, in this picture, is not about rules. It is about recognizing that every movement changes the pattern, and that some movements deepen harmony, while others create tension. One of the first implications of a living universe is tenderness. If the cosmos is not a cold mechanism but a connected presence, then everything inside it becomes part of that presence. To harm the environment, to strip the land thoughtlessly, to pollute oceans and skies, these actions no longer feel like damaging property. They feel more like bruising a living body, disturbing the breath of a larger organism we depend on. Even if the universe does not feel pain, the metaphor guides us. We are inside something delicate, something worth caring for. Another implication is responsibility. If our awareness is part of a larger awareness, then our choices become extensions of the universe's own unfolding. The thoughts you carry, the care you offer, the compassion you show, they may be small in the grand scheme, but within this perspective they are cosmic gestures. They shape the universe's experience of itself through you. Imagine a river flowing through a quiet village. The river has no human senses. It does not judge or speak, but everything poured into it becomes part of its being. Clean water allows fish to thrive. Polluted water carries pain downstream. A living universe might be similar. Our actions, kindness, cruelty, creativity, carelessness, flow into the larger system. They become part of the universal story. In this sense, ethics becomes less about commandments and more about resonance. What kind of resonance do you create in the world around you? Do your actions bring harmony, like gentle waves rippling outward from a thrown pebble? Or do they create discord, like sudden storms disrupting calm seas? Even if the universe is not conscious in the way we are, treating it as if it possesses inner value can soften our relationships with everything inside it. Plants, animals, rivers, forests, these no longer feel like resources but companions. Stars and galaxies no longer feel distant but connected. And other humans, with their own fragile awareness, begin to feel like reflections of the same cosmic interior that moves in us. Ethics in a living universe can also inspire gratitude. If consciousness, our consciousness, comes from the universe, then every moment of awareness is a gift borrowed from something much larger. Your ability to love, to think, to wonder, to breathe in the quiet of night, all of it arises because the universe allowed for conditions that made life possible. Gratitude does not need words. It can be felt in the way you move through the world with gentleness instead of haste, with attention instead of indifference. There is also a question of meaning. If the universe has an inner dimension, then your life becomes part of that inner dimension. Your joys, your sorrows, your passages through growth and struggle are not random sparks in an empty void. They are threads woven into a vast story, threads that matter because they contribute to a much larger picture of existence. Meaning becomes something shared, not something invented. Some people find comfort in this thought, that consciousness might not be a lonely island but part of an ocean of experience. Others find humility, that awareness is not something humans own but something we borrow for a while, like a lantern lit from a fire older than the earth. And still others find curiosity, wondering what responsibilities come with being a small flame within a cosmic lantern. Ethics in a living universe does not require believing that stars think or galaxies feel. It simply asks, what if everything you touch is part of a larger whole? What if your actions ripple outward forever? What if awareness, your awareness, is not an accident, but a way the universe opens a window to itself? If this is true, then living ethically becomes a way of honouring the universe's own unfolding. Caring for the earth becomes a way of caring for the universe's body. Kindness becomes a way of caring for the universe's mind. Curiosity becomes a way of caring for the universe's desire to know itself. You might never know whether the universe is truly conscious, but perhaps you do not need to know. Acting with tenderness, responsibility, gratitude, and meaning creates a world that is gentler, more beautiful, and more alive, regardless of what lies beneath the surface of existence. And if the universe does have an inner life, then these actions become part of its breath, part of its ongoing awakening. There is a particular quiet that settles over the world late at night, when the sounds of the day have faded, when the mind softens, and when the distance between your thoughts and the stars above you seems to shrink. In moments like these, the question of what it means to exist within a universe that might, in some distant way, carry awareness becomes less of an abstract idea and more of a feeling. You begin to sense the subtle possibility that your life is woven into something vast, ancient, and gently attentive. To move gently into this perspective, imagine standing on a shoreline just as twilight deepens. The waves come and go, each one shaped by forces that started far beyond the horizon. You feel the breeze, the sand cooling beneath your feet, the rhythm of the water pressing in and retreating. You are not separate from this scene. You are in it, part of it, carried by it. And in this stillness, it becomes easy to imagine that the universe itself breathes through such rhythms, that your existence is one small, delicate movement in a much larger pattern. If the universe holds even a faint form of awareness, then living within it becomes a kind of participation. Not participation in the sense of performing or producing, but in the sense of simply being present, allowing yourself to be another expression of the universe's unfolding story. Your breathing becomes part of the cosmos breathing. Your thoughts become ripples in a space that gave rise to thought itself. Your presence becomes a continuation of something that began long before you and will continue long after. To feel this more, deeply imagine the way a forest thinks across centuries. Each tree grows toward light, sends roots into the soil, shares nutrients with its neighbours. None of these actions are conscious in the human sense, yet the forest behaves like a unified being with its own sense of balance. If you sit within that forest, you become part of its quiet presence. Your pulse slows, your senses open. You begin to feel the way the forest holds you. Living within the universe, if it has its own kind of mind, might feel similar. An invitation to settle into a rhythm far larger than yourself. In this view, purpose becomes something softer than we usually imagine. It is not a specific mission or goal handed down from somewhere above. It is the simple act of existing consciously within a universe that may be learning to understand itself through the countless expressions of awareness that arise and fade across time. Your purpose might not be something you chase. It might be something you embody, being a point of clarity, warmth, curiosity, or compassion within the greater field of existence. To explore this, picture a lantern glowing in the window of a quiet home. The lantern does not illuminate the entire world, but it creates a circle of warmth around itself. Anyone who passes by feels the glow, even if only for a moment. Human consciousness might function in a similar way, a lantern within the universe, offering a local place where awareness becomes gentle, reflective, and bright. The universe does not need every lantern to be brilliant. It only needs each one to glow in its own way. Living within a larger mind also transforms how we experience time. Instead of rushing from one task to another, instead of treating each moment as a step towards something else, we might begin to see time as part of the universe's own unfolding awareness. Each moment arrives fully formed, offered to you like a small shell placed carefully on the shore. When you slow down enough to pick it up, turn it in your hand, and feel its texture, you are participating in the universe's contemplation of itself. You're finding meaning not by doing, but by noticing. The idea of being part of a larger mind also invites humility. If consciousness is a cosmic expression, then each individual mind is a brief, precious visitor, a flicker of presence within a vast sea. This does not make your experience insignificant. It makes it sacred. A moment of love, a moment of kindness, a moment of grief. Even the act of feeling these things might be the universe sensing itself in new, intimate ways. Imagine then that each thought you have is like a drop of rain falling back into an ocean, small on its own, but part of something endless. The ocean does not judge the shape of the drop. It simply receives it, folds it into itself, and becomes slightly more than it was before. If the universe has a mind-like dimension, your inner life might contribute to it in the same way. Each insight, each emotion, each small act of attention enriching the larger whole. This perspective brings comfort to human struggle, pain, confusion, uncertainty. They feel different when seen as currents moving through a larger field of awareness rather than isolated storms. Suffering becomes not meaningless chaos, but part of the universe's long process of learning, adapting, and unfolding. joy becomes not an accident, but a natural expression of harmony within that same field. And hope becomes not a fragile wish, but an inherent movement of consciousness toward integration and light. Living within a larger mind also changes how we relate to one another. If every person is a point of awareness within the same vast consciousness, then compassion becomes less of a moral choice and more of a recognition. When you comfort someone, you are comforting another expression of the universe's own interior life. When you listen deeply to someone, you are listening to a different echo of the same presence that lives in you. And when you act with care, you're participating in the universe's ongoing effort to create harmony within itself. Perhaps this is why acts of kindness feel meaningful beyond their immediate effect. Perhaps this is why moments of shared understanding carry a sense of warmth that lingers long after the conversation ends. They remind us that we are not isolated minds drifting through an indifferent cosmos. We're connected, threads within the same tapestry, sparks within the same fire. In the end, living within a larger mind is not about believing anything specific. It is about softening into the possibility that your life is part of something immeasurably vast. It is about being present enough to feel the quiet hum of connection beneath the surface of every moment. It is about recognizing that awareness is not a solitary flame, but part of a constellation of light stretching across time and space. When you breathe, you are the universe breathing. When you wonder, you are the universe wondering. When you rest, you are the universe settling into itself. And through these simple acts, you keep the lantern of consciousness glowing, adding your own warmth to a cosmos that may be far more alive inside than we have ever imagined. As we come to the end of this long, soft journey, there is a sense of circling back, returning not to where we began, but to a quieter, deeper version of the question that started everything. If the universe knows itself, even a little, then what does that make us? The question does not need an answer, it only needs space. And so, in this final session, we let the question drift gently through the room, like a stray beam of starlight that touches a wall and then slips away. To settle into this space, imagine yourself standing at the edge of a calm valley near dusk. The last warm traces of sunlight rest on the hills, shadows stretch long and soft, and the air feels as if it is holding its breath. You look out across the land, and you realize that everything around you has been shaped by countless stories. Mountains lifted by ancient pressure, rivers carved by time, trees rising from forgotten seeds. And somewhere in the vastness of this moment, you realize that you too are part of that story. You're not looking at the universe from the outside, you're looking from within it as an expression of it. In a very gentle way, this is what our entire exploration has suggested. That consciousness may not be an isolated spark flickering against a silent backdrop, but a continuation of something older and more widespread. Perhaps the universe whispers through particles, then through atoms, then through cells, then through minds, each stage allowing awareness to grow more intricate. Or perhaps awareness is fundamental, woven into existence from the beginning, and everything that arises, stars, galaxies, humans, are expressions of that primordial interior. Whichever path you lean toward, the heart of the journey remains the same. We have wandered through quantum stirrings, cosmic webs, theories of information, and visions of a universe softly aware. We have considered whether complexity gives birth to inner life, whether the universe perceives itself through integration rather than senses, whether every mind is a local flicker of a larger consciousness. And now, at the end, the question returns not as a puzzle to solve but as an invitation to feel. To help this feeling unfold, imagine a vast cathedral made not of stone, but of stars. Each star is a lantern set high in an endless ceiling. Each galaxy is a pillar supporting the weight of time, and somewhere within this luminous cathedral you stand, a single point of awareness looking upward. The cathedral does not ask you to understand its architecture. It only asks you to be present within it, to listen to the quiet echo of your own thoughts as they mingle with the silence of the cosmos. If the universe has an inner life, you are part of it. If the universe dreams, you are one of its dreams. If the universe remembers, your experiences become part of that memory. And if the universe wonders, then your wonder, this very moment of curiosity, is not separate from that cosmic contemplation, but part of it. This does not give us certainty, but certainty is not the goal. The universe rarely speaks in certainties. It speaks in patterns, in rhythms, in quiet unfolding. Even science, with all its precision and clarity, often leads us to places where facts dissolve into deeper questions. Yet these questions are not frightening. They are gentle signals that we have reached the edge of what words can hold. In this softness, meaning takes on a new shape. It becomes less about finding definitive answers and more about recognizing the richness of being alive within a mystery. It becomes less about understanding the mind of the universe and more about realizing that you may be one of its thoughts, one of its ways of exploring itself. Imagine now that the universe is a single breath drawn across billions of years. Stars form as part of that inhalation. Life arises in the long pause afterward. Minds awaken during the exhale. And here you are, a small flicker in that cosmic breath, feeling the world from the inside. Your joys, your fears, your memories. These are not trivial disturbances. They are part of the universe's internal weather, small swirls of awareness inside a vaster storm of existence. If you look back on your life through this lens, something softens. The moments that felt lonely become connected. The moments that felt purposeless become part of a larger unfolding, and the moments that felt fleeting become precious, because they are not isolated events but expressions of something impossibly old. In the stillness of night, when the lights are low and your mind begins to drift, you might sense this continuity. You might feel the faint hum beneath your thoughts. You might notice how your awareness stretches, first to your breath, then to the room, then to the world, then to the vast dark sky. And in that stretching, you might feel the quiet possibility that your awareness is not limited to your body, but belongs to something far larger. Whether or not the universe is conscious, you, right now, are a moment of consciousness within it. And that alone is remarkable. You're a brief window through which reality observes itself, a tiny opening in the fabric of existence allowing light and thought to pass through. You are the universe reflecting on the universe, and so we end where we began, with a question. Not a question to solve, but a question to rest beside, a companion in the quiet hours. If the universe knows itself, even a little, what does that make us? Perhaps we are the eyes through which the universe watches its own stars. Perhaps we are the ears through which it hears its own silence. Perhaps we're the soft, fleeting dreams of something vast and ancient. Or perhaps the truth is simpler, that to be conscious at all is to be woven into a mystery so deep, so gentle, and so beautiful, that the asking itself becomes part of the answer,